Yes, so watching Prime Morning, it's time for us to delve into what the newspapers have for us. But today, our main topic has to do with the proposed, bill for the importation of certain goods. And there are 22 goods that there's proposal on it for the that to be a limit on it. I want to quickly read through these goods. The 22, there's rice, there's gut, bladders and stomach of animals, poultry, animal and vegetable oil, margarine, fruit juices, soft drink, mineral water, noodles and pasta, ceramic tiles, and corrugated paper and paper band, mosquito coil and insecticides, soaps and detergent, motor cars, iron and steel, cement, polymers, fish, sugar, clothing and apparel, biscuits and canned tomatoes. Now, we'll have some guests to join us this morning, but the very first person who is joining us, and he will be the one to break down every nitty-gritty of this to us, is Isaac Kofi Ejay, who is our data analyst with the Joy Brands. Good morning, Isaac.
Good morning, Rosalie.
How are you today?
I am feeling better. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic by the grace of God. And thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You're welcome.
I'll come to you for us to delve into that topic, but I just want to let our viewers know what the newspapers are carrying, and then we can delve into our topic for today. So kindly hold on for me.
Great.
Okay, so I'll start off with the newspapers. I'll start with the New Crusading Guide newspaper. The New Crusading Guide. Garnet partners intensify voluntary HIV self-testing campaign. Kole-Klottey MCE in court over land dispute. NDC discusses industry challenges with AGI. NLC writes to New Crusading Guide. GRA staff tabled their concerns for redress, Electrochem's commitment to local participation unwavering, and the banner headline reads, on the matter of alleged attempted sale of Speaker's official residence, Lands Commission begins probe as a rise to parliamentary service for further and better particulars. The Finder newspaper is the next newspaper. GRA wins High Court case to recover $15.5 million US. Electrochem builds 70 artisanal salt mining pans for 7 towns. 2 in every woman suffered intimate partner violence, says GSS. Eye healthcare facing major challenges in Ghana. And Otumfuo bemoans brain drain consequences, calls for creation of opportunities for young graduates to stay work in Ghana. And this is one thing that we are all crying for, because the young are leaving too much, and it's quite worrying. The Daily Guide newspaper. We Power collaborates with German institutions. Brian chairs Cote d'Ivoire Ghana Cocoa Initiative. Nana wants NDC troublemakers, and Seydou Adengo class group donate to Mepe residents. That'll be all for the Daily Guide. We do the Ghanaian publisher newspaper. Electrochem supports other citizens with portions of its concession to mine salt. Brian Champon chairs Cote d'Ivoire Ghana Cocoa Initiative. Dame stops Torenko. Okay, Dame, it's not Dame, sorry. Dame stops Torenko, says company not credible to partner Tor. Defense Minister lauds government support for military, and Ghana to host a global conference on cyber capacity building. The Ghanaian Times newspaper is my final newspaper. And it reads, brandishing of machetes, weapons at ex-President Mahama's office. President slams NDC supporters as Mahama condemns fixing the country movement. Join political discourse to help shape country's development. Speaker to traditional rulers. Minority kicks against LI to restrict importation of 22 items, which is our main topic for this morning. And Ghana to host maiden global conference on GC3B. That'll be all with what the newspapers are reporting. And like we said earlier, of course, it's all to do with the new LI that the Trade and Industry Minister is proposing to Parliament. And this will enable them to ban certain goods, about 22 goods, from being imported into the country, meaning meaning that we will have to produce our own products here, and we will definitely be consuming our own, which will help strengthen our city. Now, if it's restricted, if this restriction comes on, then it could go good, it could go south, or it could go west. We don't know. But Isaac Ofieje is on us this morning, on our Zoom this morning, to explain every single detail that we need to get to know about it. Isaac, good morning once again. I know I've greeted you. You are looking fantastic this morning, so I'm joining you here. Okay, so we had to pull you out to have this conversation. And of course, this restriction, we don't know if it's good, if it's bad, but Ghanaians have been calling on the government to do something about our industry, meaning that we should produce our own goods, which will help strengthen our city. The trade minister says that this is what he can do, but it looks like the minority says, no, we won't agree with it. Please break down this new LI bill to us.
Well, so basically this whole thing, the efforts to actually restrict what government calls the strategic products or items. They are strategic products or items because it is probably easy to produce them here and then also create what we call the import substitution. So currently what we are having is that there is this big hole between what Ghanaians are demanding and what our economy is able to actually supply in terms of this 22 strategic goods that we are talking about. So day in and day out, you see Ghanaians gaining strong taste for the imported version of this product. Not because probably Ghanaians do not like made in Ghana products, but it has to do with the issue of cost and then also supply or availability. So if you come to the Ghanaian market, for instance, sometimes people want the local rice, but because of the cost of production, when the local rice comes onto the market, it comes at a higher cost. And if you compare it to a certain perfume rice, which has been brought from Thailand or from China or from somewhere, then the Ghanaian is tempted to choose what is from China to what is produced here in Ghana. It's not because probably that person doesn't want to consume, but it's as a result of the price. And then also the fact that Ghanaians have had their cost, their purchasing power reduced over the years, where at a point inflation was even around 54%. So you consider all of those things and you ask yourself, do we have that, muscle, the capacity to actually do what we call the import substitution? The bill is not looking for an outright restriction on imports. The bill says that if you look at these 22 strategic items, and we are learning that government is adding more to the list. So the last time I checked on Friday, it had reached somewhere around 23. So as and when we move forward, as and when a product becomes strategic and so important and is draining the economy of Forex, then probably we'll go ahead to add those things. And Ghanaians have been debating that, there are two sides of the coin here. Some are happy that we are actually banning or putting restrictions on these 22 products because others feel it's been long overdue. Why should we be importing things like toilet roll, toothpick, and then fruit juice when we can easily produce them here in Ghana? But just like I asked, production is important. But at what cost is the producer producing it? Here is a case we started 2023 at a point producer inflation was over 50%. It means that any item that was produced here in Ghana, before it could even leave the factory gate to the final consumer, the price had already increased. And if it comes onto the market, then it means that the consumer is going to buy at a higher price. There are others who are producing at a relatively cheaper cost elsewhere in China, in Malaysia, and if you bring them here, they are cheap. But if you are importing from Malaysia, Malaysia will not take their currency, or they will also want dollars. And we don't print dollars here in Ghana. So the few that we have, that we are supposed to balance it between those who are going to bring in pharmaceuticals, those who are going to bring in refined crude and cars, we have to probably allocate them in such a way that the dollar will not be in short supply, where we'll have majority of it in the black market, and they have the probability of actually, fluctuating prices or increasing prices in the market. So basically, Rosalind, the bill is not an outright restriction on all 22 items. They are strategic. And so if someone wants to import some of these items, according to the bill, you have to see the minister, who will then look at it and look at our forex situation and ask or answer a very simple question: if we have the capacity to bring in that good and it will not have repercussions on the exchange rate. So going forward, it will make the minister look like the go-to source where importers will have to go submit their proposals and wait for response. And others have criticized it and they say this is going to breed corruption.
I was going to ask that question, won't that breed corruption? Because, of course, if you want to be able to import it, you have to send in a proposal. Sometimes, not always, sometimes you might have to oil somebody's palm. Yeah. As to who, we don't know, but sometimes you might have to oil it. And depending on your relationship with the person, then you know that it could be granted or not. So thank you so much for explaining to us. So don't go anywhere. We'll definitely come back to you. Let me speak to a stakeholder in this particular, situation. We want you at home to also get involved in the conversation. Please send in your messages to us and let's get interactive as possible. The restrictions on these 22 items, what your take on it is, if it should happen. Now, Isaac has explained to us that it doesn't mean that completely is restricted. However, if you want to import, you just have to present your proposal to the minister for consideration. And once you have been approved, you can go ahead and import it. As to whether it will breed corruption or not, we don't know that one as well. But the stakeholder has a lot in there, and his name is Fred Kukubo. He's a CEO for Farmer Global. He's also a rice farmer. Good morning, Fred.
Hi, good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. Yourself?
I'm doing fantastic this morning. Now, Fred, there's a new LI bill, the restrictions. If it should happen, let's talk about it. Okay, let me ask you your general opinion on it before I even ask you, how it will affect you, whether negatively or positively.
Yeah, thank you very much once again for this opportunity. I think that generally it's a good idea. I think it's about time we look at our domestic resources and how best we can turn things around so that we can, boost the local industry as much as possible. So the concept or the idea is good. I think how the conversations have been going ever since it was mentioned, largely is about the implementation, what strategies we want to put in place to make it a much more, formidable policy. So the idea is good for me, more or less, yeah.
It's good. Now, talking about it, if it's passed, how will it affect you in a positive way or in a negative way?
Well, for me, it will be positive, given the fact that we are in the local production of most of agricultural produce, particularly the grains, rice, soya, maize, and stuff like that. And, we do have competing products in the market, particularly the foreign brands that seem to compete strongly against the local production. So what that means is that there will be much more focus on local production, which by extension would increase our demand and marketability of our products. So those are the positive aspects I foresee in this.
But people have complained that locally produced goods are quite expensive. So what can we do then to, have a good price rate so people don't consume these foreign imported goods?
Yeah, that is true, Rosalind. You see, if you look at, I think Isaac did mention some of the reasons why some of our local products seems to be quite expensive than the foreign brands. It's largely infrastructural challenges, the cost of production. So take rice, for instance. If you want to do rice, and if you know how rice production goes, you have to develop the entire system, your field, which would involve the use of heavy machineries, like excavators, dozers, because for rice, you need to get the field leveled as much as possible so that water can actually settle, on the surface of the soil and all that. And you need heavy machinery or infrastructures like this to be able to get it done. Now, if you look at the cost of development of agricultural fields, farmlands, compared to the cost of development elsewhere, the gap is really huge. Most entrepreneurs or farmers who want to go into production pretty much have to take care of the full cost of production by way of field development, and then the production, and then the operational cost as well. Now, if you go to these developed countries where most of our import products are coming from, there is massive government support, okay, in their production systems. Like go to Vietnam. I've been to the Asian countries, Indonesia, Vietnam, and China, and stuff like that. And you realize that there is huge infrastructural development by the government. So if it's about irrigation system, the government has done it, and there are canal systems that moves through most communities. And so all you have to do as an entrepreneur is just to plug into the infrastructure development with some little capital, which then would go into your production. But over here, the farmer would have to combine all these resources, And so at the end of the day, you produce your crop, which in terms of quality, food safety is at par with the foreign brands. Then you realize that your cost of production has gone higher. And so the producer is forced to actually sell it a bit, higher or marginally higher above the foreign, brands. And that is where the challenge is. So it is more about the implementation strategy in terms of our readiness. So what is the infrastructure development in terms of irrigation, in terms of warehousing? We need to look at all these things. And if these things are done, okay, that would help to sort of bring down the price so that it will become more affordable to the consumer.
Right. Now, talking about the transition, if it's done now, will you be able to supply the needs of Ghanaians? Do you think we have enough stakeholders in here that can feed, clothe, and take care of Ghanaians?
At the moment, I think, truth be told, if it's going to be like a sudden restriction, it's going to have some dire consequences in terms of our consumption, our product that we could consume. But I think it has been said that this could be regulated, okay, or we could phase it out. The question is that of the 22 products that the ministry wants to impose a restriction on, which of them can we truly do without? For instance, mineral water, ceramics. If you go to Tema, there are a lot of industries that are producing these kind of stuff there. So for me, I think it's about prioritizing the ones that we truly can do without. Then we put a restriction on them. And then perhaps secondly, we can also look at, the threshold of most of these products if truly the local capacity is not there. So gradually, we could be putting a certain threshold for importers. So take rice, for instance. If there's about 50% importation of rice, could we put a threshold on it so that it would, boost the local producers to up their game, to absorb that gap that has been added onto their production capacity. So for me, immediate restriction, I think, would cause some kind of challenges with respect to specific products. However, I believe that looking at the list, there are some of them that we could actually put immediate restriction on them. Mineral water, so to speak. There are a lot of companies they are big giant producing mineral water. Not to advertise for any brand. Who doesn't know Special Ice? Who doesn't know Evapure and the likes? They are doing quite well, and there are even many local producers of the mineral water in the country. So I think we could be selective, a bit more selective of the 23 or the 22 list that have been brought out there, and look at those that we can truly do without, while the rest, perhaps we put certain threshold on them.
Okay, Fred. I'll definitely come back to you, so please hold on, don't go anywhere. We are being joined by an economist who is definitely going to tell us how this restriction, if passed, will affect the country, whether positively or negatively. Good morning, Dr. Patrick Asumin. You are an economist. Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to listeners, and also to my co-panelists.
Right. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing well by God's grace.
Fantastic. Let me briefly touch on the 22 items that have been proposed to be restricted for the sake of my viewers. We want them to join in. Now, these are the items: rice, gut, bladders, and stomach of animals, talking about yema adie. Poultry, that is to do with, in cocoa and all of that. Animal and vegetable oil, margarine, fruit juices, soft drink, mineral water, noodles and pasta, ceramic tiles, corrugated paper and paperboard, mosquito coil and insecticides, soaps and detergents, motor cars, iron and steel, cement, polymers, that's plastic and plastic products, fish, sugar, clothing and apparel, biscuits, canned tomatoes. These are the proposed 22 items. Doc, what's your general opinion on this proposed LI restriction bill?
Good morning again. So, I think that if you look at the general principle of what we are trying to achieve, there's been a wide acknowledgement that our dependence on import is not sustainable. This country imports too many things that we should be able to produce. And on that list, you see there are a lot of food items. So there's that acknowledgement. And therefore, in fact, beginning from last year's budget, there was a sense that we are going to do a lot to reduce our imports. That is the general principle, which I agree with. The issue is the timing and the way this is going to be implemented. So if you look at especially the food products, it's not something that you close your eyes one time and you'll be able to produce. It requires time and a lot of investment. As Fred said, if we are in a hurry to impose these restrictions, there will be problems because we have to first ensure that we have the domestic capacity, but also actual production is taking place. Because if you reduce the imports and the domestic production is not able to take up the slack, then you are going to see prices really escalate. And actually, that might be enough to defeat the policy, because if prices go up today and Ghanaians start lamenting, you know that the government might be forced to roll back the policy. So I think it's absolutely important that we make sure that we've done the necessary investment so that domestic production has picked up. And then obviously, if we have the numbers and we're able to know on year-to-year basis how much domestic production is picking up, then we also be able to stagger the quantity that we are restricting. So I think the first thing that has to happen is domestic producers being ready to step up their production. Then we start restricting the import. So I think that's the main thing I want to say. Then second thing is we also have to worry about the way we are implementing this. So it appears that it's going to be restriction of who can import using import certification. That it has a potential to be problematic because essentially we are going to be issuing import licensing, and we don't have a very good history of doing these things, managing these things properly. We tend to favor friends and families of people who are related to politicians. And I think that is where the problem could be. So I don't know exactly how we plan to roll it out and how the import licensing will be distributed, whether it will be based on the businesses who are currently importing and what magnitude. So those ones are implementation challenges. I think the broad idea that we are trying to reduce our imports is a laudable one. We just have to make sure that we do it in a way that it doesn't cause problems.
Right. Now, you spoke about the time duration and how it should be implemented. Talking about the time duration, how much time do you think that one would need to be able to implement such a bill? to have a successful run, I must say?
So, I mean, there are different items involved. Some of them are food items, some are non-food items. I don't know if you have to take them item by item. I don't think we can implement all of these at the same time.
Okay.
So if you take the food items, for instance, if you take the rice, I think sometime last year it was announced that the government is trying to support the cultivation of 100 million or 100,000 acres or so of land. I don't know how far that has gone and whether we've also set up the milling capacity to be able to take up the produce and then get them ready. So on that score, you saw that some action was started last year. So if the action has progressed enough, then you expect that maybe you might be in a position. Then the other items like sugar, I don't know that we've made any specific preparations. We had a commander sugar factory, but we kind of allow you to run down. Then, so you take it item by item. As was said, I think it appears that it's the mineral water that we seem to have the immediate capacity to rack up our domestic production. So you could decide to break them into where your readiness is. So the way I see it is that this is a framework that is going to have specific timelines for different items. You can't, so it should be as and when we feel that for a specific item, our domestic production capacity is way up there before we roll them out. So I don't see all of them being rolled out at the same time. Depending on when we are able to produce enough, then we decide to implement for that specific session. I don't think all the 23 items can start at a go.
All right, Doc. Dr. Sumain, I'll come back to you and have more conversations with you. Kofi?
Hi, Rosalind.
Yes, Kofi, let's talk about Ghana being the 13th highest country to import rice. I'm quite surprised at this because we are number 13, the whole world. Our rice consumption is really, really huge. And so talking about this restriction, if it should happen, how much is it going to affect us, looking at where you sit?
Well, so it's clear rice also has demand and supply, gaps. And just like you said, we are the 13th highest importer of rice. And this one, it was even somewhere around 2021. And the demand has increased. The strong taste for foreign rice has also increased. And if you look at the product that we bring in annually, rice was actually number third on the import side. And this is according to OEC 2021. So in 2021, a country like Ghana spent more than $500 million on the importation of rice. And if you look at countries that we gave this money to for us to have the refined rice or the perfumed rice that we are talking about, in 2021, we imported about $394 million from Vietnam, 53.3 million from Thailand, more than 50 million, almost 60 million, 51 million from India, and China, 21 million, and then also Pakistan. But I would like us to go through these 22 strategic, items that we are talking about. I do not have the figures for all of them.
Okay.
But I know that there are some of the products that myself, I am surprised they are not part of the 22 strategic products.
Which ones are those?
I feel that they should be part. So if you look at an item like, I think palm oil, right? I don't know if part of the...
palm oil.
Yeah, in 2021, Rosalie, we spent $289 million, almost $290 million on the importation of palm oil. And if you look at the sources, Malaysia was number one. I remember some time ago, I think we even helped them out to do certain things in terms of, building this industry. And we end up, spending close to $290 million on, importation of palm oil. Then I don't know why it's not part anyway, but I feel it's very strategic. And brooms for sweeping. yes, for sweeping, there's modern ones and even also there are other ones. We see the amount we spent in 2021 to bring in brooms according to AEC
How much?
is about somewhere around $26 million.
For brooms?
Brooms, $26 million in 2021. And I'm sure that the figure has even gone up as at the time currently, I'm sure the figure has gone up. And one thing that probably, I don't know if we can do it here, but is draining a lot from our, forex is fake hair or wigs. Wigs. We are spending more than $226 million on wigs. And I don't know if we have industries here that can do that import substitution or even.
How do we produce it here? They go and cut the hair in India.
But if you see
I get your point here.
Yeah, that the kind of pressure that even just the importation of wigs is actually putting on the economy, more than $26 million in 2021 is huge. A product like processed fish.
But I think when we look at, if we look at the things that we process here and the things that we don't process, things like wig, of course, we know that it's difficult to process them here. We know that it's very difficult to manufacture them here. But there are things that are manufactured here and we are depending on those that are coming from abroad. And that's where the issue is. Because talking about palm oil makes a lot of sense, because one would say that palm oil back in the day, even behind your house, you can produce palm oil. So why are we importing palm oil?
Yeah. And Doc actually talk about, sugar. And if you look at the amount we spent on sugar importation in 2021, more than $185 million. That's huge. Clothing and apparel, some of them we call the Obroniwe and then the second-hand product. Ghana is actually the number one. We've been in this position. We are the number one importer of used clothing since 2004. We've been number one, and annually we spend more than $200 million to bring in.
Number one in the world or number one in Africa?
Number one in the world, not in Africa. Number one importer of used clothing.
Wow!
And we import the majority of them from the UK and then the US. And Ghana is number one used clothing. If you add the amount the cost involved in the importation of sugar and then Obroniwe or used clothing, we are hovering around $400 million annually. That's huge. This is unacceptable. You can't spend $400 million of your foreign your forex, an amount, currencies that you don't produce here, and everybody is after that currency, and you get it, and you are spending it on Obroniwe. That's unacceptable. So I don't know, but if you look at soaps, for instance, soaps and detergents, how can a country like Ghana spend $41 million on soaps and detergents and spend $260 million on mosquito coils and insecticides? I don't get it. And I feel these are some of the products that we can easily ban. I mean, soaps.
Soaps we can. And what happened to life skills? So, when we're in school, we're learning how to make soap. So most homes, they can make soaps on their own. But when it comes to the insecticide, maybe one would say, Kofi, again, that, these things are not readily produced in Ghana. So it's going to be a little difficult. But with the soap, everybody can produce soap.
If after 60, more than 65 years, we can produce insecticide, that's shameful.
Anyway, let me speak with Fred, who is a farmer. He's a stakeholder in this. And so, Fred.
Yeah, Rosalie.
Yes, I mean, the figures are quite alarming. You're a farmer. Hearing that Ghana is spending this much in importation of palm oil, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, I think it sounds quite interesting, a bit ridiculous, if I must say, for some of the items that we are importing. And so it's actually a big worry. And that is why sometimes big problems like this requires, big, drastic solutions to curtail it as much as possible. And I think Isaac was spot on when he mentioned about the cost, the import bill for some of these commodities. And they are really very shocking. And I think we can do something about it as much as possible. Earlier on, I think for if you take rice, for instance, I think earlier on, some time back, so I think 2-3 years back, there was an attempt to get the importers and the local producers to work together, in an attempt to get them to invest in the local producers so that they could then uptake the product and for their marketing, which was a fantastic idea. But I'm not too sure that approach or that approach saw the day of light. It didn't last for long, and people were falling out of that whole arrangement, and then there wasn't any massive or better, if you like, monitoring and management of that whole concept. I recall at the time, some of the importers contacted some of us, and we had some discussions and all that, and they never came back again. And what we saw was that they went back somehow, somewhat, into the importation of their own staffs. And this keeps confronting our work. Ghana, for instance, if you take in terms of our local production of rice, it's in the tune of about 2 million metric tons maximum. And nearly about 50% of that metric tons is being imported in country. And I think Isaac mentioned well over $500,000 million is the import bill for rice alone. If you take poultry, it's closer to some $5 million and the likes, And now the local poultry industry seems to have collapsed simply because of some of these importation of product that otherwise we could have a coordinated effort for the importers to work with the local producers, or otherwise importers could also consider going into the local, domestic production. Then it generates more jobs and opportunities for the largely rural youth unemployment situation we have in this country. So it's a challenge, I must say. And but we still need to up our game, I believe. We still need to be in business. We still need to survive, So I think that they should pass it anyways. However, like we are all saying, there should be some prioritization and look at those that we think we can control and maybe look at the approach and strategy. Now, the fear here is the possibility of compromising situations, favoritism and all that. I think that is the challenge or the fear here. Otherwise, I still think that we need to make this effort as a country. It's going to boost local production as much as possible, and it's going to create more opportunities for everyone in the country. So for me, I think we should look at it and do prioritization, and then have a face it out. Let's say in the next quarter, or let's say in the next year or two, can we say we are reducing importation of some of these products, like poultry products, which I know the local industry does not have the capacity, maybe reduce it by a certain percentage or threshold to give opportunity for the local industries. Somehow, somewhat, we need to push this agenda. It's a hard one. It's a tough one. Other countries have done so. And they went through the difficult situations, the challenges like we are discussing now. And today, I think they are much better off. We kind of glamour so much about Nigeria's rice industry. Back then, it was more like a rush, a drastic decision that was made at the time. And we all saw what happened, whether if they produce it locally or not. One thing we know for sure is that at some point in time, Nigeria was rice sufficient. And I think we need to put away some of these fears, if you like, and then push the agenda, but have a more regulated control system to make sure that indeed it is open and transparent and indeed benefiting indigenous companies. We need to be careful about this approach as well for me, because sometimes when you do this, before you realize the foreigners or those that you are trying to put restrictions on will find their way back into the system here and then begin to own up the system and dominate as well.
That becomes an issue.
Exactly. So we need to look at all that and make sure we have a system in place to promote and support indigenous companies to boost their productivity, to boost their capacity, build about infrastructure development. Let there be a willingness and a commitment from the government in particular to do so that the local industries do not suffer when this is implemented.
Well said. Anyway, I'll come back to you and have a conversation with you. Let me go to Dr. Esuming, our economist, and ask him a few questions. Doc?
Hello.
Everybody has complained about inflation. We've complained about the cedi depreciation as well. Now, if this new LI bill is passed, how will our economy be affected? Talking about the inflation.
Well, I think it depends on the effect of inflation. Depends on so many things. It depends on how ready we are to produce domestically, and then the order in which the measures will be implemented. As I mentioned earlier, so the long term, we have to take a long term view of it, and the long term view is to try and not just save us some foreign currency, but also boost domestic production and then also employment. I think all of these are very important long term objectives that we should have. Every time we import, we are shipping jobs abroad because it means we are preventing domestic businesses. We are reducing their business, and then we are actually financing foreign businesses. So the potential impact and the potential positive effect are many and varied. So I've already spoken about the employment. I've already spoken about the foreign exchange savings, but it also reduces our vulnerability to external shocks and events. You've seen that during the COVID, and even after the COVID, some countries have decided that for whatever reason, for their own national interest, they are going to restrict the exportation of some things. As recently as even this year, I'm sure we've heard about countries like India and others restraining the export of grains. So what it tells us is that when push comes to shove, we can't depend on other countries for some essential items because they will decide that they will serve their own needs first. So I think it is very important that we are making the decision that especially things that we can produce locally, we are going to produce them locally. And I totally agree with Kofi and Fred. Some of the items that we import are quite ridiculous. It shouldn't be happening. But at the same time, we shouldn't be in a hurry. We know we've made mistakes in the past. It's time to have a long-term plan. We don't have to say we abandon the importation of rice all at a go. We will start investing domestically, helping domestic businesses. And then as we see their production go up, then we gradually restrain the import a lot more. If we don't do that and we immediately restrict production of all of this when the domestic substitutes are not available, prices are going to go up. Right. But I think we should all rally behind this idea. Is a good idea. We all complain about domestic jobs. We all complain about our city. We all complain when prices are skyrocketing. I think this is, at least, it's a signal that we are trying to do something to curtail the imports. But we have to be more strategic about how we go around it and not taking a knee-jerk decision to say we are cutting imports of everything.
Doc, what will be the best short-term plan?
For me, I would have started with domestic investment, especially the food side. I think the food side is very important because it's an area that we have a lot of potential. So you start with the production itself. If you take a product like poultry, that has to start with production of maize, because we've seen how the industry has suffered from the high cost of maize production and then feed. So for me, I would have started from there, the key inputs to feed that industry. And then when we have enough maize production and then enough chicken feed production, then it goes on to the actual poultry. Then from there, I can start restraining the imports. So that's what I would have done. Same with the rice, same with all the agricultural products. Then there are some of the soap and other things. We have to look into where the inputs are coming from over the long term. And then we start with doing things to make sure that we are producing enough of the inputs. And then when we are ready to upscale to the output side, then these import restrictions will kick in. So for me, I would have started with easing the domestic cost of doing business, encouraging the domestic investment in those specific sectors. And when I start seeing the output, then I will scale up to the import restriction.
Right. All right, Doc, I'll come back to you again. Let me go to Isaac. Isaac.
Yeah, Rosalie.
Looking at what Doc is saying, if we should implement this with short term, based on your analysis, how will we help us all?
Well, I see this to be a double whammy because I listened to Fred, I've listened to Doc, and the most important aspect or the reason why we are introducing this bill is mainly because of the forex outflows. Okay, so we do not have enough dollars to bring in these products. If we had more reserves and the CD was stable, who cares how much we spend on rice, importation, or whatever. But now that we find ourselves in a situation where our import cover is just a little over probably 1 month or 2 months, then it begs the question, how long can we do this? How long can we be doing this knee-jerk, policies and reactions? So I ask myself, the reason why I say it's a double whammy is because, one, if you import more without you having the dollars, you end up, sending the few dollars you have away. And if you also restrict people, just like Fred said, you may end up bringing the foreigners into your market. They come in and they talk about, what we call direct investment, foreign direct investment. They come in with their dollars, they set up the business here, they build all the big shops, they build all the big industries. And when they make the money and they want to send it back to their country, they don't send it back in cedis. They would want dollars. So it's +1 -1. They come, they make so much here, and when they are sending the money outside, they send the money in dollars. And the dollars that we need them to stay here for Bank of Ghana to have total control over, they send them outside. And another angle to this is the fact that, it's been established. We don't have the capacity to produce some of the things we've even listed as strategic products. I wonder why a product like toothpick is not part. Because if you listen to the 2023 budget that the finance minister read in 2022 November, he told us something. I think this is where this whole import restrictions started coming in. He told us something that actually struck me. He said that Ghana's import bill was exceeding $10 billion annually. And this was because of items like iron, steel, aluminium, sugar. There was rice, there was fish, there was poultry, there was palm oil, there was cement, there was fertilizers, pharmaceutical, toilets roll, Rosalind, toothpick, and even fruit juices. So I'm wondering why, if you are talking about 22 strategic items, toilet roll is not part. Toothpick is not part.
Tissue paper, apart from toilet roll, tissue paper.
When in the OEC data, we see almost all of these items that we are talking about. The import bill, the least you can get is probably $20 million every year. So if you are spending $20 million on some of these things that we can actually produce here locally, then we are hurting the economy our own selves. And this year, for instance, and even majority of last year, when we had inflation skyrocket, it was mainly because of the import side. The import side, because this is a country that we have a foreign taste for almost everything. Even the least thing that we can even produce here, when the Ghanaian wants, is they want to be imported. Not because the local industries here do not have what it takes to do it, but just like Fred said, they are battling a whole lot. You budget to start a business with, let's say, 200,000 Ghana cedis, and just because of some exchange rate variation, your capital just gets split into two, and you have to start all over again. Businesses are facing a lot in this country in terms of the cost of production and even the cost of labor. We always say that, workers should have good remuneration and good condition of service. But we should ask ourselves, the industries that we have in Ghana, especially the local one, can they really, afford the labor when you keep increasing minimum wage. It's not because they don't like to do it, but because they are faced with a whole lot of things that they can't afford. And so I feel that, just like Doc said, the implementation process is the most important aspect, where governments must start looking at these 22 items and start asking themselves, which ones can we start rolling now? And which ones can we get the perfect substitute or the import substitution quickly? And not the ones that will take a long time for us to actually produce. I'm talking about some of the motor cars.
I was going to ask you, looking at the list that we have, what are some of the items that you think should not be on the list? Let me quickly go through the list again. We have rice, guts, bladders, and stomach of animals, poultry, animal and vegetable oil, margarine, fruit juices, soft drinks, mineral water, noodles and pasta, ceramic tiles, corrugated paper and paper board, mosquito coil and insecticides, soaps and detergents, motor cars, iron and steel, cement, polymers, that's plastics and plastic products, fish, sugar, clothing and apparel, biscuits, and canned tomatoes. Which of these items do you think should not be on the list?
Sugar, number one, should not be on the list.
Why?
Motor cars should not be on the list. Sugar, because you don't even have a state-owned sugar factory here in Ghana. So if you talk about import restrictions, what are you restricting? Are you restricting so that we have the prices go up? How are we going to do it when we don't have what it takes to produce the sugar locally? So right. I think that sugar should not be part. Motor cars should not be part, because over the years we've shown that we cannot even give our local industries what it takes to actually, give them the boost to produce. It should not be part. If you look at steel, should not be part, because right now you have about 1.2 million of your housing units that are vacant. Nobody is occupying them. Your housing deficit is around 2 million, and you have about 1.2 million empty. Why do we have a deficit of 2 million and 1.2 million housing units empty? It's because people cannot afford. We build, and then these things are so expensive. Building materials are very expensive, and you go and be restricting things materials that are very important or crucial in building, like steel, and you want people to still build. Then you want to kill the ordinary Ghanaian. So steel should not be part. So these are the top 3 items that I think should not be part of the list at all. Okay. We should substitute them with things like toothpick. I mean,
the palm oil.
Things that we can produce here in Ghana, and the imports will not be painful, like things like sugar and steel and all of those.
All right, but do you think? What about the animal and vegetable oil?
Animal and vegetable oil. Well, I think that it can be included, because we can produce them here. I mean, we have land. If you travel across the country, if we just invest, it's not so difficult. And again, it tells you how weak some of our policies are, Rosalind. This morning, I don't know why, but I feel that if you look at something like planting for foods and jobs, we spend close to $71 million every year on that policy. And at this point, after almost 5 years, we've now realized that we need to put restrictions on imports. I mean, it's actually funny, because you can't spend $71 million on a project like planting for foods and jobs, which has not given any significant, results. Because if it had, then we wouldn't be here talking about restricting imports on poultry. Poultry is also rearing, right? We wouldn't be standing here or sitting here talking about Yemadia and things putting a lot of pressure. Where did the rearing for food and jobs go? Where did it go?
Where did it go? That's the question Kofi is asking. Let's take some comments, and afterwards I'll speak with Fred, who is the stakeholder in this. So where are some of the comments coming in? Please and please again, if you're home and you're watching us, do join the conversation. We would love to hear from you this morning. So my guests are still online. They're not going anywhere yet until our conversation is done. I just spoke with Isaac Ofieche, who is a data analyst with the Joy Brands. Also Dr. Patrick Esumin, who is an economist, and Fred Kukubo, who is the CEO for for Farmer Global, and he's also a rice farmer. So Alaji Hamza Pig Farm says, good morning, Rosalind. In my humble opinion, it's good for us to eat what we grow and grow what we eat. But I'm afraid this proposed restrictions will go a long way to affect the retailers and the wholesalers the more. I don't think we are there yet. Talking about rice and sugar, I think the Ghanaian can grow this to feed the whole nation. And also, if we care, is not this will, okay, if you care, this is not what will lead us to a lot of corruption, because a lot of powers has been given to the sector minister, which is not good. The LI should be withdrawn from Parliament, and let's think about it again. Thank you, Alaji. Koresko Zakaria Sunyane says, Mahama is the leader we want. He will win 2024. With 247 economy, unlike the incompetent one, Baumia, who has his own vision but cannot tell what the vision is, you can imagine chop bars operate 247. Artisans, tailors, VRA, ECG, manufacturing industries, and even prostitutes will fully adequate security. With full adequate security, what would be a joyful country will have under Mahama 247 economy. Hey, do you add prostitutes to boost productivity come 2025? Also, Mahama built market hospitals. Mahama supported pharmaceuticals industries like Tobinkos, Ernest Chemist, etc. Ghanaians are saying, Baumia, tell us what your own vision is and stop the archaic politics. Greetings, Alaji Al-Hassan Mayanka, Regional Communications Officer, Charles Akowa Bono. Okay. Good morning to you. Christmas is around the corner. Some religious denominations has already had their Christmas celebration already, but majority of us are now preparing psychologically, emotionally, and physically for this awesome yearly celebration. But it clearly looks as if the government has no business plan for the nation with regards to presentation of the budget. That is, inflation is nothing good to talk about. Exchange rate is contributing to folding businesses up in the system and what have you. My point is that the government should bring down inflation rate to single digits or negative. 2, exchange rate policy should be reviewed. The exchange rate policy should be reviewed, And also 3, the government should encourage and promote locally produced goods and services to strengthen the currency. Love, respect, Aaron Bebako Komisa. Philip Abochi says, good morning to everyone. In the 2024 elections, Ghanaians will vote based on issues. Donado Baumia and party boys ran out of ideas. There's nothing MPP can offer us again. His Excellency John Dramani Mahama will be the best candidate who can salvage Ghanaians. If unqualified security wants to disturb us during and after the election in 2024, some of us will deal with them. Abochi Philip from Kita. Hey, Abochi. All right, so we'll try and get the other comments coming in as well, and we have a conversation. Let me go to Fred and ask him about quality of items produced in Ghana. This is some this actually is one of the complaints coming from consumers in Ghana. Quality that is being produced here. Fred.
When it comes to food consumption, quality is a very crucial or critical aspect. I think that the regulators, I mean, with FDA, the Food and Drug Authority, so for those of us in the space who are producing food for consumption, you pretty much have to get your product certified. So it goes through those systems. And then they have checks in place that I know that occasionally they go into the market to pick some of the local products and then do their test and all that. And just confirm and ensure that they are conforming to the quality, specifications that is required. So I think that we are doing quite well. And of course, I mean, if we also want to look at it from a different angle, it's in terms of the foreign product, they have more or less the resource capacity when it comes to branding, when it comes to, adding more stuff that will make the food a bit more attractive and all that. But I think that, honestly, we are doing quite well, particularly with our grains. These days, if you look at the local brands of produce on the market, I think it's quite encouraging. Back in the days when you buy rice and, you buy it from a local, and these kind of containers, and you have to do sorting out by yourself, pick out the stones and all of that. But these days, the local brands that we see around are pretty much good. The branding is quite on point, and some of them you get to see them and you wonder whether this is truly a Ghanaian brand. So I think we are getting there. And for me, I think we are actually there. And we've seen instances where, interestingly, some of our local products are actually rebranded into foreign bags.
Oh, really?
Yes, exactly. You go to some of the rice producing schemes, like from Esuchari and the likes, and those schemes, government schemes and all that. There are people who are now picking high grade rice and bagging them into foreign bags. And so I think we are improving. For me, I think we are doing quite well. But then there is still a lot to be done to improve our systems. It is no longer the olden days where you have to do a lot of sorting out, or you have to, boil food for a long while before you are guaranteed of safety when you consume. Things have improved, things have changed, and I think we have to recognize that.
If things have changed, why are Ghanaians not accepting our own? Why are these farmers bagging the rice into foreign bags to sell?
I think it's about consumer affordability issues, the prices and all that. So people can take advantage or be a bit dubious and take advantage of that gap, and just to be able to fit into the market system. So it's about consumer affordability, the prices of food and products on the market, so that could account for that as well. And then secondly, like we said, this is also about the demand and supply matrix. Okay, maybe someone have developed taste for the local rice, but then the consistency of supply is not there as well. So it could make the person now shift to a different brand, pretty much a foreign brand, and that could affect the local brands and production as well. So there are certain indicators that informs consumers in terms of their taste and preferences and what have you. But I believe strongly that if we take a look at certain fundamental challenges that are confronting the local industry, that could really help to boost the performance in terms of quality. I did mention earlier on the infrastructure. Secondly, we need to look at warehousing systems. Our warehousing system is quite not the best because already our productivity in terms of yield compared to the developed countries is low. So if we manifest or we invest so much time and energy in producing these crops, which are of quite low yielding potentials, and yet at the end of the day, we have very poor post-harvest systems in place by way of warehousing and logistics to move this scanty ones in terms of the numbers that we have managed to produce. We don't have a proper warehousing system to store them in the right condition, the right temperatures that is required, and ensure the right systems in place. And we don't have the logistics, the road infrastructure to move them from the farm gate to the city center, then to the consumer's table. Then we are losing them all. So sometimes our access to food is not as a result, or our challenges when it comes to access to food is not is solely as a result of our inadequate production in terms of yield. We have produced them, but what actually comes to the city, or what actually comes to you and I, our table, is lesser than what we have actually produced because of the post-harvest losses. So we need to work on that aspect as well. And that would help us to actually ensure that we are producing premium food product on the market. Then again, I think I would like to, before it skips my memory, when it comes to the production base, our access to land. Look, we need to be very intentional about agricultural land banks. Let us not include political approach like we see happening in this country. You go to countries like Turkey and even Israel, and other developed countries.
Hello, Fred. Oh my goodness. We'll try and get Fred on freeze again because unfortunately the network is messing up. Let me speak with Dr. Esuming. Doc.
Hello.
In the meantime, Ghanaians are calling on, inflation rates to drop, calling on the cedi to strengthen. What other strategies can be used aside this restriction on importation to strengthen our cedi and also to bring down inflation?
Well, we also have to export more. I think the cedi, it comes down to how much we are importing and how much we are exporting. So overall, I think trying to improve the overall management of the economy is absolutely important. I think you've heard the businessman talk about the cost of doing business in this country and the challenges that you have to face if you run a business in this country. So I think we have to address all of them. If we put all these restrictions and the constraints to production are not addressed, and therefore we are not able to produce more locally, then it will not really take us any far. So I think whatever the challenges that businesses face doing business in this country, rising utility tariffs, rising cost of production, rising interest rates, all of those have to be addressed. But we also have to be intentional about which sectors we have to support the exportation of. There are some things that we know we can do much better, especially adding value. Even the ones that we export, the cocoa products, there's some way to go to increase the share that we are processing. And we've also seen some local beverage industries have to show potential for export. So we should encourage all of that. So it is both looking at the import measures, but also export measures to help diversify our sources of export so that we are not only dependent on a few items.
Right. Kofi?
Rosalie?
Yes. Do you agree with the doc on this one?
Oh, of course I do. I mean, it has to do with the balance between how much you import and you export. And there's some sort of good news for Ghana. I think if you look at the most recent data released by the the Bank of Ghana, we've had a trade surplus. I think, yeah, and it's good. It's increased by more than 16% to hit somewhere around a little above $2 billion. But because of the magnitude of the import bill, we can have a very sweet trade surplus, but a very bitter side in terms of the import, and it actually negates everything. And so we have to look at it from that side. And if you look at these 22 strategic items that government is trying to put restrictions on, and I map it to the kind of tax reliefs government gave to local industries in the 2024 budget, and I think that there's no correlation. There's no correlation in the sense that you want to put import restrictions on some of the 22 items, and I don't see not even 10% or 20% of these items that we are talking about featuring in the tax reliefs. So you leave the businessman in a very big dilemma. That's what are they going to do? You want them to produce at the same cost? How they scale up? You give reliefs to industries or local industries in Ghana, and we can't find about 20 or 30% of these 22 items in the reliefs that you produce. So I'm asking myself, when government's actually implementing some of these things, do they think about the linkage? Because I don't see any correlation between the tax reliefs that government gave the local industries versus what it's trying to do right now.
Kofi, let me come back to you. I'm sorry, let me ask Doc, because of what you're saying, I just want to ask Dr. Esuming, if, we have a situation whereby this restriction is passed and there is a demand on, the few products, does it mean that we'll have inflation go high again and the cedi depreciates? Is it possible? Hello, Doc. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Kofi, come back, please. I'm sorry. I think that we are trying to get Doc back. So, Kofi.
Yeah, of course, Rosalind. If
I have
I'm
to
to
pose
answer
this
the
question to
question,
you again.
yeah. So, I mean, obviously, if we put the restrictions, there are two things. It's either we save ourselves the forex outflows, or we even cause people. We can even generate a black market out of this, where smuggling and things can arise out of this. In fact, smuggling, not just corruption, but smuggling and other things can arise out of it, because we have our next door neighbors in terms of Togo, where import bills are actually very, very, the cost of import is low. So people are able to bring in a lot of things from China and what have you. And sometimes people go there to bring some of these things. And if you look at our porous borders, they don't necessarily have to come to the Tama or the Takoradi ports, or even via the airports. Just along our eastern borders, people are doing smuggling, and then because of our porous borders and all of you. But to get back on the kind of linkage I was trying to get from the reliefs that government gave local industries versus what it's trying to do right now, just like I said, I don't see any linkage. There's no correlation. It doesn't look like this is very coordinated. It feels like somebody just woke up and decided to do this. I mean, because if this is really a policy that government has really thought through, then we should see the linkage. It should have reflected in the 2024 budget.
Right.
Very extensively, because it's important. You are talking about forex, and this is something that you are battling. It's a reason why your balance of payments, the reason why you are currently at the IMF, looking for $3 billion, and then even waiting so long for tranches to release. So if it's something we really want to do, but it's something we are really serious about, I think that it should have reflected heavily in the budget, and we should have allowed the ministry to go ahead and lay the LI for us to see this being implemented. But because of the disjointed nature of some of our policies, you cannot establish any correlation between the bigger picture in terms of the bigger frame government has in 2024 versus what the trade ministry is trying to do. Very disjointed.
Anyway, Kofi, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Super duper grateful. Trust us, we are very grateful.
Thank you.
Do have a fantastic day. Isaac Kofi will tell you as it is, and we don't know if this LI will help us or not, but let's see what the future holds. But currently, we've been told that these 22 proposed items that are in the bill, the economist is saying that we should take our time. There is the long-term effect, there's the short-term effect. It could affect us positively or negatively, looking at how it's going to be implemented. And also the restrictions, talking about those who want to import will have to seek the permission from the minister, could breed some sort of corruption. We also spoke about the quality of items produced, and also how government can come in with help for the stakeholder who have to supply the needs of the consumer. Are we ready for that yet, or we are not? Well, that's for us to get to know at the end of the day. But let's not forget the minority is saying that they will fight this bill with their sweat, their blood, and everything. Let's take some comments before we go off. Kojo Anobil Samuel says that this restriction will only cause price shooting up because we don't have the capacity to sustain ourselves with regards to the commodities or items mentioned. Dennis Nemison says, thanks for the good work you're doing for Ghanaians. It's loud and clear inside Community 22 taxi station. All the drivers are doing their listening. My greeting to Mr. Eric, champion painter, and Mr. JK, the great timeline. Please advise the drivers for me. We know this December is their time, but we beg them they should take it easy. If they for no say we know them alive, that they for not drink and drive, we beg. Okay, so they shouldn't drink and drive. Dennis, all right. Thank you so much, Dennis. Hi, Rose. Nice to see you. Hale and Hetty. Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting experts to give us objective and nationalistic analysis of issues rather than the biased and rancorous political spin doctors who would defend any nonsense to score political points at the expense of public good and national interests. All right, so to all of you that sent in your messages today, we are super grateful. We actually do cherish you all the time, and so we need you to join us every single time we come your way.